you've watched any Gentleman's Gazette videos, you know I love clothes, and so building a closet was a holy grail thing to do for me. We moved into our house in 2017 and had a child shortly thereafter, so I didn't focus on my closet right away. Basically, I had an entire empty room for my closet, and my wardrobe was scattered throughout my studio and other parts of the house. Did I ultimately need a custom closet? Probably not. I could have made two, but I would have probably overlooked many of my clothes, and I definitely wanted a custom closet because the idea of designing something from scratch that houses a collection of your passion was just exhilarating. So with our daughter requiring less immediate attention and a push from my wife and business partner Teresa, I embarked on the planning journey of my closet. This series is being made possible with the support of Arterton London. Arterton London is a website and store in the Princess Arcade in London, and while they supply hangers to Savile Row, they also have nice shoes of smaller brands. They have other leather goods, shoe shine products, and everything that is not clothing, but clothing related. They're a great company to work with. They were super helpful when we were in London and helped us with filming there, and I can't speak highly enough of them as a company. And of course, the hangers they provided for my closet are just phenomenal. When doing my closet research, I realized how little information there was about men's closets and how little information also there was on design inspiration out there. So I could find, stylized images of a particular angle of a closet, but it didn't really show me the full closet or everything from different angles, or it didn't explain why things were done and what mistakes were avoided. That's why we decided to make a series about the whole process and highlight all the things that I learned along the way, so hopefully you can get something from that. At first, I did not have a clear idea of what the closet should look like, but I quickly realized that my designated space had lots of limitations, mainly the wall space. Most closets are built around walls and everything is wall mounted, but I had a big 18 by 18 room and not much wall space. So 2 floor-to-ceiling islands in combination with some wall space seemed like the way to go. I looked at various options, starting with systems like IKEA, the Pax, the Elvari and Alpha, local closet companies, national chains, carpenters, and larger operations and, custom design build companies. The prices ranged from $15,000 for bare bones DIY to well over $100,000. And eventually I settled on a local company called Scherer Bros because they offered the best value for the money while still maintaining the idea of a true custom product. Their main customers were usually home builders and interior designers, so they mainly worked with tradespeople. So that meant that their customers, their interior designers, had to be able to mark up the product to the final end consumer, and hence I got a closet at a wholesale cost. I also liked the idea of being able to go to a physical showroom, touch things in person, see how the quality actually is, feel how the drawer opens and closes. And I could also visit the manufacturing plant and I could see how everything was actually made in the USA. Of course, that came with certain limitations. For example, we had to use MDF and could not replicate the existing wood detail in our room. MDF is also heavier than wood, and with 2 big islands, the static load was also a question. After all, once it was all said and done, the wardrobes, the hangers, the clothes easily weighed as much as a small SUV. So we enlisted the help of a structural engineer because that stuff is outside of my expertise, and even the closet company didn't know much about it. It was even hard for them to just come up with a weight number, but they were eventually able to do it. Other companies weren't able to give me a number of how much that closet would weigh. Fortunately, our house was built by the superintendent, CEO of the Brainerd Lumber Company, and so they used only the best oath-rolled wood in this house with massive beams and support columns, so we were all good to go. Of course, just like any old house, you will never find perfectly straight floors, walls, or ceiling. I put a lot of thought into planning out my dream closet. And Scherer Bros came to our house, to measure the room and see the space. I told them everything that I wanted, and we had a follow-up meeting at their showroom. I think that was a really essential step because they could see where the final product would end up in. I also talked to some other companies, and everyone came to the house to actually look at the room. They took lots of notes, went back to the factory, and came up with initial plans. So when I showed up at their showroom, they presented me with everything we had initially discussed. Also, I could feel, see, and touch everything in person and get a first-hand impression of what it could be like. Also, it was really helpful to experience that because it highlighted all the limitations and opportunities. They were also able to give me physical samples of the color I chose, which I can then use, with other samples like wallpaper and hardware, for example. Now, my designated closet room had carpet in it, and I thought that they would want to rip that out, but turned out no, they didn't. They were happy to build on top of the carpet. So it all started with a color selection of the MDF. White is their standard, of course. You can get something like ivory. They had tones like black. They had wood grains and all sorts of other stuff. The adjacent room to the closet room is our bedroom. It had blue and green tones. And when I saw this color called Celadon, which was a light mint color, I decided that this was a good color to have because it would blend in with the room next door, but it would be different from the woodwork in the existing space. Because if I couldn't get a one-to-one match of what we already had, I wanted something contrasting that was different. I'm a big fan of color, not just in clothes. Any faux wood grain finishes were a no-go, as they seemingly age very poorly, and the style is just too clashing to a real nice wood grain that we couldn't replicate. Now that I had picked the color, I also considered a wallpaper, which was not something the closet company provided, but I started looking online. Of course, I could have gotten a color match so the walls sort of looked like exactly the same as the closet, but I wanted more contrast. I knew I wanted a masculine wallpaper, and so my first choice was a Sudic range from Philip Jeffries. It had nice chalk stripes and window panes. And what was special about it is that it wasn't just printed paper, but it actually felt and looked like a fabric. Sadly, the wallpaper alone would have cost around $15,000 just for the room, and that didn't include the actual hanging of it. I felt that was too much, so then I looked for different options. Eventually, I found this equestrian blood green wallpaper from a Romanian company called Mind the Gap. It immediately exuded this like Ralph Lauren vibe to me. It had tones of green, blue, red, and yellow, and I knew it would work perfectly with the closet and the reddish brown we had in it. Also, we had this bench in our closet that had a blue custom-made velvet pillow. That would work well with it. The green Celadon closet would work with it. And I figured any other color typically would work with it because it was a multicolor wallpaper. Our room had limitations because there were lots of windows and doors. And so I made sure I ordered enough wallpaper so we could cut around it and match it, because it was basically a big plaid and it requires more wallpaper than like a plain wallpaper or a striped wallpaper. But ultimately, if you get a wallpaper, it's best to talk to your decorator. He can tell you exactly how much you need. I did a little more work for myself and did all those calculations myself using online calculators. I knew that the way the room was and the way the wallpaper was, there was no chance that I could hang this myself. I had zero experience, and I would just butcher the wallpaper, and I have to spend a lot more money to just fix it. Now, keep in mind, wallpaper shows absolutely every imperfection in the wall behind it. And we had some round corners with ridges, and so we had to fill that stuff first. We also had some people come in to prep the walls, and I even got a quote from someone to kind of perfectly prep the walls, but that alone would have been $7,000. And I thought, well, I don't want to spend that much money just on the prepping. And if I had a bold wallpaper and I saw some imperfections behind it, that was just part of the character of the house. Anyways, I used the platform Thumbtack to find a wallpaper hanger, and I found one. He stopped by, gave me a quote, $1,100. That seemed fairly cheap, so I said, let's do it. I spent another $500-600 on the people to prep the wall, and he brought someone in. And I think after the first full day, the hanger realized it took him a lot longer than he thought it would, and he underquoted it. So he kind of came up with an excuse, he had a family emergency, and basically never showed up again. So then I checked out another person. He was called thewallpaperguy.com, and Gary was from Manchester in England, and he had been hanging wallpaper since he was 17 years of age. Now in his 50s, he had plenty of experience, and he also quoted me $1,500 for the rest of the room, which seemed okay to me. So later he also said that he underestimated the job and should have quoted more. But he, stood by his quote. He didn't let me hanging. He finished the job beautifully, and he put in what it took to deliver the job. So obviously, picking the right craftsmen and women really, really matters. Otherwise, you can be stuck. Back at Scherer Bros, we now had plans, and my rep Angie was very experienced and helpful. I would stop by a few more times at their showroom, talk about details, maybe changes I wanted to make. Frankly, I think I stopped by more often than a typical customer would, but I'm also very detail-oriented about stuff that matters to me, and clothes do. I also didn't want to have any regrets once the closet was built and done, so I was willing to invest the time up front to get everything right before they started cutting and drilling holes. In my mind, the easy part was determining all the hanging space, the depth of the hanging space, the drawers, the dividers, and etc. I was a bit concerned about the walkway space, and so we decided to convert one wall into hanging space. That was a change from the initial plan, but we felt like it would give us a bit more comfortable walking space. Also, this shelf wall would house, things like bags, knitwear, and stuff like polo shirts or t-shirts. Maybe I could even put decorative items there, like hats. The shallower depth allowed for a wider walkway, and I now have 38 inches or 96.5 centimeters, which feels very spacious in my mind. And one thing that really helped me to visualize things in the space was to use painter's tape and taping the outline of all the pieces on the floor, and then I would put, boxes and suitcases on it so I could feel how tight that space would feel. If you get SketchUp and you have an Oculus, you can actually get a better idea of what a closet would feel like in a space, so I highly recommend you do that. At the time when I was doing it, there was no affordable version of SketchUp, and so now it costs $18 a month. I think it's totally worth it. Back then, I didn't really have that. Another thing that I really appreciated about a custom closet was that I could only have holes drilled where I needed them. Typically, when you get shelving, it has all these multiple holes, and that has the advantage that you can really adjust the shelves up and down, but I liked the polished look of a custom closet. Didn't have all these holes along the sides. That also meant I wanted to make sure that I got everything right, because I could make easy changes later on. Also, I wasn't happy with the tie solutions they offered out of the box, so I showed them my own design plans. We even went so far to make a little sample tie rack, and I changed it again, but it gave me the ability to actually test what it would be like with the right bars, and that gave me the confidence to then order this tie rack and say, go for it, I know it's gonna look good, it's gonna work well, and it's exactly what I want. I also realized that, their options in gold were quite limited, and so I had to see what they use and then find other bars. And when I got the bars, I realized they were quite a bit too slippery for the ties, actually. So they came up with an idea to add a certain coating that was transparent so you can still see the gold color, but the ties would actually stay on the bars and not slide down, because especially silk ties can be quite slippery. I think felted bars also would have worked, but then they wouldn't have been golden. So, there's many ways to roam, and there's not just one solution. The good thing is right now, if I find really great felt bars, I could still retrofit them. I doubt I'll ever do them because it works, it looks fine, and I'm not willing to put even more work into the project. Of course, when you build your closet, you don't realize that you need lots of hardware and all the little things. And because our existing room had all this quality old world brass stuff, I wanted to go with gold hardware, ideally also in brass. Sadly, they didn't have all the colors, but they were like, hey, if you find stuff, we're happy to work with it. But it required me, to test it, get samples. And so I had to browse the internet a lot. Our rooms have these large diameter curtain bars that were used to prevent drafts and keep rooms warmer back in the early 20th century. And so I wanted to emulate those wide bars in the closet, and I found really big rods, so that's what I got. Also, I ordered samples first, so I could actually see what the finish was like and if it would work. Because gold is not all the same. And then you can have, a shiny look, you can have a matte look, you can have more a champagne color. So there's lots of variations. Now, of course, I also experienced one instance where the samples I got were different from the production main order, but that was just bad luck then. Luckily, the company also had things like, belt holders that I thought could also be used for things like cummerbunds. So you just need to be creative and think about things and how they can be used, because really there are no cummerbund holders out there. And of course I needed drawer handles. What they had in their offering was rather modern, which would look very strange in an old house with this beautifully detailed, fine brasswork from 1901. Eventually I found like new old stock handles from Amarok, which is a solid brand, and they had matching doorknobs. So they had a flat handle version and a curved one. So I bought both just to see how they would look and what I would like and how it would feel opening and closing them. Also for shoe shelves, you basically just have a shelf that's held in place by pegs, and you can exchange the pegs and change the angle that you want to have your shoes sit on. I like when it's angled towards me so I can see it, but in order to keep the shoes from sliding down, you need a railing. But again, the Scherer Bros stock options did not have anything in a brass color. So I looked online and found a double bar brass gallery rail and post that had, throughputs and end pieces, and it was an unlacquered brass, so I knew it would create a nice antique patina like the brass that was already in the room. They also sold matching rods, but they were limited in length and very expensive, so I literally went to an online metal store and I bought brass rods in a certain diameter. I didn't realize there were that many different kinds of brass. Some have lead in them, others don't. Eventually I just got samples and it worked really well with the other thing that we had, and so was happy to find something that all matched. Once I had all the stuff, I shipped all the items to Scherer Bros directly so they would have them there, and I would go there in person and check that everything was correct. Now, when I measured my shoe shelf, I just figured I could do it from the left to the right, but when I talked to them, they were like, well, because of the weight and we really care about stability, we have to put a dividing wall in there, and they suggested just putting it in the middle. However, actually putting in the shoes, I realized it would not maximize the space and I would lose certain pairs. So by testing everything, I made sure that on one side I could have 4 pairs of shoes, and on the other side I could have 2 pairs of shoes. It's not symmetrical, but it gave me the maximum yield of the shoes. Otherwise, I'd have to split up a pair of shoes, and that would have looked odd too. So basically, by doing it their way, I would have lost 1 pair of shoe storage per row. And I thought that was just unnecessary. Another thing that was really important to me was to have hooks. So when I took something out of the hanging space, I could hang it, I could look at it, I could hold a tie next to it, a pocket square, a boutonniere, and just see how it all worked together in the outward combination without having to hold it. Of course, I didn't just want some ordinary plain hooks, and so I found this craftsman, Tutura from the Ukraine, who made these beautiful cast animal-inspired hooks. And he had a few different ones, and I asked him, well, can you make other custom ones? And his reply was, well, I can only make stuff if we have gas. Right now we don't have gas, so I decided to get the stuff that he had in stock. I decided to get 8 different ones because I loved his attention to detail. I got a tiger, a German shepherd, an eagle, a ram, a Labrador, an owl, a wild boar, and a fox. Can you see a theme here? Very traditional, masculine symbols, and that's what I was going for with this masculine closet. And when I got them, I could feel the weight and the heft, and I could see the attention to detail paired with the aging of the brass, and I could not have been happier with them. Now, they weren't cheap. They were like, $50 a pop, but it was definitely worth it. I also realized that, that the hook shouldn't be flush with the wall, and I decided to put like a diamond behind them so I could hang even 1 or 2 hangers there and nothing would be squished against the wall. That was, an idea that I came up with together with Angie from Scherer Bros. So really, when you embark on a project like this, it is a collaboration, right? You learn from their experience, from all the mistakes we've made, and they learn from you about what it is that you value and what you want, and you come up with new solutions that they may have never done before. So once I had bought all the hardware, we had all the materials, and we finalized the design, it was time for production. And because we were in the same town, they let us come to the factory and see how it was all made. Todd was very gracious, gave us a tour, showed us all the steps, provided us with earplugs and safety glasses, and heck, they even let me try my hand on adding laminate, cutting edges and drilling holes. It was quite fun to see that and be a part of that, because not many people are able to say, I was part of building that closet. Of course, they're no amateurs, so they use high-end machines. They have barcode scanners for everything, so the holes are automatically drilled and no mistakes are made. It was also a lot of fun to see and understand how all of this German precision machining and tools was working. Once everything was done, it was time for the install. And first, all the material was delivered to the garage, and then a crew of 2 set up shop outside. They cut little things to size, and they had their system down. I think initially they scheduled just about 2 days to install the closet, but it took them way longer. I would guess they were here almost 12 days. Now, because they were used to working with construction companies, Scherer Bros did not have, any electricians. So I had to organize that myself. And because the room already had LED strips on the picture rail, I knew, what transformer I had to buy. I knew what strips I could get. And so everything would look good together. The idea was that we already had that bright LED strip all around the room, but if we would add even more on top of the islands, we would have nice indirect light as it was reflected down from the white coved ceiling. Of course, because there were islands, there shouldn't be any visible cables, so the electrician was able to pull power from a nearby outlet and fish the cables underneath the floor, and then he drilled some small holes in the places where the islands would be, and he could fish the cables through. These holes would be covered up, and all the wires could be gone through predefined channels in the wardrobes all the way up, so we had them at the top of the individual closet islands. So everything was ready for the install. And I had planned to be there in person when they put up the closet, first of all so we could film, but also to answer any questions and just to make sure they didn't screw things up. Also, I'd used painter's tape to kind of outline where the final things should sit so we could visually see where things should go. Now, the installers at first disregarded it. They used their plans and the measurements they had, and I don't know if they held it wrong, but the initial idea was to put the island in a way where it would block part of the walkway. And I had carefully designed this whole thing so we would maximize the space without cutting into the walkways and the doors. The idea was that I could walk around freely and intuitively. And then it was good that I was there so I could tell them what I really wanted, and they listened. First off, they started by creating a flat base with adjustable feet because they knew that most floors in older houses are not 100% level. And in the plans, they calculated everything based on a flat floor. So in reality, in our house, there were significant changes because we had a wall underneath. So they leveled that floor out on the high end. So I quickly realized, oh wow, they're adding stuff that was not originally in the plans. And so I asked them to lower it as much as possible, which was more work for them, but I knew when I had designed it, I had made it so I would be able to comfortably take out a hanger. Now, if they elevated the whole base by 5 inches, I may not be able to do that without like a stool or a ladder, and I didn't want to do that. So even though the plan was great, I didn't think about the uneven floor and how they would level things out. Now, it was also good for me to be there because I noticed things that just weren't right. For example, the drawer pulls had a slight curve. It was supposed to be a U shape. But some of the handles, they came in the upside down, even sometimes on the same drawer, so someone didn't have the best attention to detail when adding those handles. Also, the little ironing board, I wasn't able to actually take it out of the closet, even though I had planned to be there. When I looked on top, the trim was uneven, and the top plate I put on there was not on there the proper way. Also, some things got damaged and had to be replaced. Others had marks on them, and the crown molding didn't look neatly aligned. So Scherer Bros was good though in the sense that they wanted to get everything right. They didn't just abandon me. They stopped by until they knew everything was done properly. And it took them longer than they anticipated, but they stood by their word and made it right. Also, I was really positively surprised that I had more space. It felt more spacious than I had anticipated, and I was thrilled about it. Ultimately, everything turned out well. Just look at the height of the middle drawers. They're just perfect for my height. I can hang things underneath. I can hang things above, but for my wife, these drawers would be simply too far up to look into. For me, they're just right. But it's exactly what I love about a custom closet. You can create it so it works well for you and not necessarily for anyone else. Now, I was particularly keen on seeing that final tie rack, and to my satisfaction, it looked great and worked exactly as I intended it to work. Similarly to the electrical, Scherer Bros did not have anyone to add granite or marble slabs to the closet. They said they could have done a laminated material, but it looked really cheap and would bring down the overall look of the closet, in my opinion. It would have looked like a 1980s kitchen, so I passed on that. But I also realized that in order to get marble in, you actually have to have the closet finished, and only then can you get something in to have everything measured. Sadly, the minimum charge for any of the counter people to come out and put something in was $4,000. And because it was just a little remnant counterpiece, I decided to wait until we would do our next door bathroom remodel so we can do it all in one go. Now that the closet was built, I needed the hangers, of course. I decided to go with Nakata hangers from Japan through the Arterton store in London. And now I want to show you how these hangers are made. First, it all starts with solid German beechwood from a company named Pollmeyer, which is then cut in Japan to the general component shapes of the different hangers. The pieces are hand marked with pencils, then sawn into the right sized pieces. The Out 9 model, which are the shirt hangers, are steamed so they're bendable. The Out 5 hangers, which are the suit hangers, are cut from a piece of wood and are not bent. The same is true for the NH2. It's not bent, but fully cut. If you look at their shirt hangers, you can see they're more curved than most suit hangers out there, which is quite impressive. They're then, glued by hand and jointed by hand with just one center seam. They're also planed by hand and sanded. And once the hanger is in the right shape, they apply a base coat by hand, followed by a primer, then another finished stain. Doing all of these things by hand means that you get a better result and the wood grain is much more visible than if it's all a machine-made process. I mean, compare this to the thick varnish of, Kirby Ellison's Hanger Project hangers, and there is a clear difference. It's like night and day in my mind. The hooks are all solid 360 hooks that are put in there by hand and meant to last and never come out. One thing they do really well at Nakata hangers is the laser engraving. It's very accurate, it's in the center, and the laser's of high quality in the sense that everything is very neat and you can't even tell that it was done by a laser. On one side there's a little Nakata hangers engraving, and on the other side is my much bigger personal monogram. Frankly, I could have sent them anything. Could have sent them the Fort Belvedere logo, the Gentleman's Gazette logo, or whatever artwork I wanted. Just keep in mind that basically the laser takes away the stained area of the wood and reveals the unstained area of the wood, so you get a two-tone piece of art. I decided I wanted a simple 1930s Art Deco-inspired monogram logo, and so I designed it myself. I shared it with Will from Arterton, and Nakata neatly engraved it in the hangers in Japan before they shipped everything to me. The pants hangers, the AUT 11, were what drew me to Nakata because they have an open-ended design which makes it easy to put on and take off your trousers, unlike the clamp and other pants hangers I had before. Moreover, they're made from the same beechwood as the shirt and suit hangers. They're finished in the same way with the same felted bars as the Out 5 suit hangers, and they all go beautifully together, and it's very consistent and coherent in your wardrobe. They even monogrammed the pants hangers, and if I could change one thing, it would be the direction of the hook on top. I would switch it by 180 degrees. That way I would see all the pants without the obstruction of the metal hanger. But as it is still, it's still a very nice hanger. What I really like about their pants hangers is that the wood portion is sturdy enough, it's reinforced by metal, and the hook also can be had in gold. Oftentimes with companies, you can only get it in silver. So as you can see, overall, I didn't choose the easy way to have a closet made. And so it took a lot longer than if I would have just worked with one vendor, if I would have just used their hardware and anything. But on the flip side, I also got exactly what I wanted. I got a unique closet that no one else will have. And the hardware is really cool. It works with this old house. I got it at a price that I was willing to pay. Now, talking about price, how much did this whole thing cost? Now, at Scherer Bros, the closet alone was about $34,000. And fortunately, I signed just before that a price increase. They told me about it. They're like, if you sign after this date, then there's going to be a price increase. So I had an incentive after all that planning to go through with it. I had to make a small down payment, which I was happy to make because I knew I was serious about it. If I had skipped the fine panel detailing and if I'd gone with like an ivory color, and then I would have paid maybe $8,000 less. However, I felt that if I was doing a closet, I wanted to get a color that I actually liked, and I wouldn't have liked white or ivory. Also, our house is very fine woodwork, and my craft skills simply weren't on par to the quality of the house, so I didn't want to ruin it. So on top of that, I spent about $1,500 on lighting LEDs and installation, another $2,000 on the hardware, $1,200 on the wallpaper, and another $2,300 on prepping the walls and the wallpapering. So overall, that gets me to a price of $40,500 without the hangers. Now, obviously, that is a ton of money. It's enough to buy a car. In fact, we didn't spend much more for our car. However, I'm a close horse, and we just had a large room to deal with. And even, an IKEA built out would have cost us $20,000. I also got a quote from California Closet, and that would have been an MDF, and that would have been in a $75,000 to $80,000 range. A carpenter could have done it in the same range, probably. A design build firm would have charged us $150,000. So you can see it's a sliding scale, and there's everything there for you to see. If we would have probably gone really simple, IKEA DIY hack, it would have still been quite a bit of money. I wouldn't have had the space that I really wanted, and I would have made a lot of sacrifices and still paid a lot of money. So relatively, for me, it was a good deal. Now, if you're interested in a smaller closet project that was based on the budget-friendly IKEA pack system, let us know in the comments, and we'll share one with you too, because our team member Jack put one together inspired by the Kingsman. Now, I haven't talked about the hangers yet. I got about 80 suit hangers, model AUT5. I got about 160 shirt hangers, the model AUT09. And I got 80 pants hangers, the model AUT11. So the retail price at Arterton, London would be around 11,500 British pounds, which is roughly 14,500. But I got a really good deal from them. But frankly, every time you buy a lot of hangers from someone, you can always negotiate a good deal. So if you're now curious about what went into the closet and how I went about it, make sure you sign up for our email list so I'll let you know when there's episode number 3 and you can check out that whole thing.